Welcome to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. The Vancouver Writers Fest connects people to exceptional books, ideas, and dialogue through year-round programming that ignites a passion for words and the world around us. I'm Leslie Hertig, Artistic Director, and I'm very happy to share this conversation featuring journalist and activist Tanya Talaga in conversation with Jael Richardson. This event was recorded live on October 22, 2019 at the Waterfront Theatre in Vancouver. Special thanks to our event sponsor, UBC Library. This event features acclaimed best-selling author Tanya Talaga speaking with author and broadcaster Jael Richardson about her books, Seven Fallen Feathers and All Our Relations.
I want to give you a sense of Tanya Talaga. Many of you are probably familiar with her words and her work, but and oftentimes I sort of shorten bios just to get to it. But I think Tanya's accomplishments are worth celebrating in every word. Tanya Talaga is the acclaimed author of Seven Fallen Feathers, which was the winner of the RBC Taylor Prize, the Shaughnessy Cohen Prize for Political Writing, and the First Nation Community Reads Young Adult Award. A finalist for the Hilary Weston Writers Trust Nonfiction Prize and the BC National Award for Nonfiction. CBC's Nonfiction Book of the Year, a Globe and Mail Top 100 book, and a national bestseller. Talaga has been a journalist at the Toronto Star for more than 20 years, covering everything from general city news to education, national health care, foreign news, and Indigenous affairs. She's been nominated 5 times for the Michener Award in Public Service Journalism, and she is the 2017-2018 Atkinson Fellow in Public Policy. Talaga is of Polish and Indigenous descent. Her great-grandmother, Liz Gauthier, was a residential school survivor. Her great-grandfather, Russell Bowen, was an Ojibwe trapper and laborer. Her grandmother is a member of Fort William First Nation. Her mother was raised in Wraith and Graham, Ontario. Talaga lives in Toronto with her 2 teenage children. Please join me in welcoming Tanya Talaga.
Hello.
Always takes a bit to get settled.
I know.
You know? Do you use the pillow? I don't know, guys.
And is this for you, the
I
timer?
don't know if that's for me.
I'll put it right
I
there.
like it, though.
I know. It's a good one.
It makes it less obvious than me constantly checking. I wanted to sort of, just so you know, the way we're going to do the conversation today, we're going to have a bit of a conversation, and then with about 10 or 15 minutes left, we're going to open it up to the audience to ask thoughtful questions. And notice how I added thoughtful in there, guys? I know you heard that. And I really thought it was, what's really special about one-on-one interviews is just getting insight into all the things that make up their career, their work, tossing in a few curveball questions to really get us all thinking about some of the issues of importance, but also just looking at your work as craft and talking about that as well. So the first question I wanted to ask is in relation to the 4 questions. I thought it was a really great place to start. If you don't know, there's 4 questions that are posed as part of the Truth and Reconciliation report that are encouraged for young Indigenous people, young Indigenous youth to ask and to think about. But Tanya's actually put me in an event tomorrow where we're going to be talking about this with 3 authors. And I thought, wow, if I ask those 3 authors the questions, then I should certainly ask Tanya the questions. I'm going to ask 2 of them, maybe 3 up front, and then I'm going to save one of them for a little bit later.
All right.
All right?
Yes.
So the questions are, who am I, where do I come from, what is my purpose, and where do I belong? And I wanted to ask you, first of all, how you answer that first question, who am I?
Miigwech for the question, and I want to say buzu, everyone here. Thank you so much for coming, and also I want to put my hands up for the incredible woman who we just heard, Celia.
Celia, yeah.
She was amazing.
Beautiful.
She's our, that's our youth, our young leaders, and she's incredible. And I haven't ducked the question yet, have I? No, okay. Who am I? I think that's a question that we all wrestle with. The 4 questions, where they come from, I have to sort of back up and say, they come from Senator Murray Sinclair. And they come from an exchange that him and I were having as I was finishing my second book, All Our Relations. And when I was writing, I was having, to be honest with you, I was having, it was hard. I had to write the book so quick, which is a whole other long story, which
we're getting there. We're getting there later.
Okay. And I turn, I'm very lucky in my life to have some people that I know and are so helpful to me. And Murray Sinclair is one of them. And I asked him, because I had seen something that he'd written about these 4 questions. And so I had sent him an email late one night, and sure enough, he responded the most beautiful response, pages long. And what he said just really, it was like medicine for my soul. Because those 4 questions, the first one being, who am I think that all of us ask that question our entire lives. You start when you're young asking yourself that question, who am I? It doesn't matter if you're Indigenous or not Indigenous. We all ask that question of ourselves. But as an Anishinaabe person, you ask yourself that question. That it makes up who you are as well. I think I ask myself that question every single day. I have from a small age. And when I think of who I am, it's a hard question to answer. I feel like I'm many things. I'm a mother. I've been a single parent. I have 2 beautiful children. I am a writer. I am an Anishinaabe Kwe woman. I am a Polish woman. My family, my mother is from the north. She was raised on the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation. She was raised by residential school survivors. My mother's brothers were taken and put into children's welfare. I am many things. All these things make up who I am and what my experience is. I'm a writer, I'm a journalist. These are the things I am. I hope that answers it. So, I think it's evolving too. I always ask myself, exactly.
Well, I think too, I heard somebody saying recently, I don't know what terms to use. People use mixed, and in my life, people always thought I was mixed and would ask me, are you biracial? Whatever term they use. But somebody recently said, when you're from 2 different backgrounds, it's not that you choose one or the other, or that you're part of one or the other, but really that you're something else, like an entirely new person in a way that combines these things.
I know when I remember being a student and someone would ask me, so, who are you? Like, where you're from? So they'd always look at me like, you're kind of exotic looking. You look like Italian or Greek. Are you Spanish? My friends would call me the Matahari, just like you can go in all these different cultures. And I'm like, no, I'm Ojibwe and Polish. And when you say that to someone, they kind of look at you like, you've got 6 heads. Like, what? You're what? How does that even happen? And you're like, well, Thunder Bay and Manitoba, Winnipeg. Happens way more than you think.
Yeah. Well, the other question that I think it leads to that I was thinking about, the question of where do I come from and where do I belong? And I'm curious about what you think the difference is between those 2 questions. Because when you pick only 4 questions, each of those questions has a really important significance. And you have these 2 questions that I think some people might think, aren't they the same thing? Or aren't they similar? And I'm curious how you break apart those 2.
She's good, isn't she?
I start with the really hard ones.
Like, oh my gosh, my favorite color is blue. I mean,
I wore blue, guys, covered.
Belonging and where you're from are two different things, 100%. I mean, you can be from a place, but you might not feel like you belong. You may not feel a sense of purpose or a sense of being part of a community or part of culture, of being part of the land. You might not feel like you belong even in your own family. Where you belong is so different of where you were from. You know? I mean, you could say, for instance, I am from Toronto, right? I live in Toronto. That's where I've raised my children. That's where I was raised. That's where I was born and raised. But where do I belong? Do I feel like I belong in Toronto? That's a hard one, you know? It's like, yes, I do, but I always felt different there. You know, but when I'm in the north, when I'm in Thunder Bay, it feels like I belong. It feels like things just feel different. Spiritually, I feel a deeper connection to place, to the water, to the land, to the people that make up the communities that I know in the north. That's where I feel like I belong the most.
That's a good answer. You passed. I wanted to start at the beginning because you've talked a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about your family background. And you've been a journalist for 20 years. Before all this exciting book stuff started happening, you were writing long before that and covering all kinds of stories. And I'm curious what it was at the start of your career that really, or even before it became your career, that really sparked an interest in journalism, and whether that's the same thing that's keeping you at it now.
Oh my gosh. You know what sparked an interest in journalism? I always wanted to be a writer. I always, from the time I was a little girl, like I was speaking today at the opening of the festival, and we had a little bit of a reception, and I was asked to be the guest curator of the festival, which is like a dream come true if you're a girl who loves to write and loves to read, and that was always me as a child. I was always the kid that didn't have too many friends, kind of in the corner with her book, right? You know, completely. Sometimes you hear that about writers, and that was me completely. And the funny thing is that like I used to hate speaking in front of the class. I would just get so nervous. My voice would shake. I would just, I would sweat, feel like I'm going to pass out. That was me, that child. And writing and reading was everything to me as a girl. And so I never felt like I was really, as you know, I was saying earlier, I didn't really feel like I belonged in Toronto when I was growing up. And so I used to write all the time and dream about the fact one day I was going to be a writer. And my dad wanted me to be a pharmaceutical salesman. True story, yep. So my dad, he was Polish, and his big dream was for me to go to the University of Toronto because he thought that all the smartest people in the world went to the University of Toronto.
Yep.
And so his daughter had to go to the University of Toronto. And I'm like, oh, Dad, I don't know. But I was lucky to have some teachers who actually also pushed me there. Some teachers that really believed in me. My English teacher, Mrs. Kraby, and my history teacher, Mr. Yancey. They were so great, and they said, this is a school for you. You need to go to this place. And so I went there, and I remember my dad was thrilled because I was going to get a BA, and then I was going to become a pharmaceutical salesman because they give you a car. You go, it's good hours, the
Very
pay's
practical.
pretty good. Yes, it was very practical, and I kept on telling him, Dad, no, I want to be a writer. Well, that went over like a lead balloon, like you want to do what? How are you going to live? How are you going to eat, And my mom was always, really supportive, and it's like, it's okay, dear, it's okay, everything will work out to how it's meant to be. And so I fell into journalism. It was friends of mine who were going to a meeting at Victoria College. That's the college I went to for the newspaper meeting. And I was always curious and wanted to try it, and so I did. And then I discovered this was my home with writers. And every day we were creating something in that newspaper office. And this was a day that we used hot wax and line tape, and we had light boards and rollers. I mean, this was like all, there were students, and we put out a paper once every 2 weeks. You know, basically had no idea what we were doing. Like, we were completely self-taught. But I have to say that the people that I met there, just incredible. And I went from there to the Varsity. And Naomi Klein was my editor when I started. And she's here. I know. It's like, yeah. And Simona Choisy, Rachel Giza.
Oh my gosh.
Doug Saunders was always hanging around our office. He went to York.
He's always hanging around.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, so yeah, these are all really long answers. But
That's good. That's really good.
I realized I could write for a living through journalism. So that's how I actually got into journalism, and it was through the strength of all the people I met too. We all sort of pushed each other because none of us went to journalism school. This is what we did, and then we just basically harassed newspaper editors to give us a chance to give us a interview so we could get our foot in the door.
And were you, like, I know a lot of your work in these past years has covered a lot of Indigenous stories, and was that where you were placed when you originally got into journalism? Was that where you were originally leaning, or is that something that sort of grew through your career?
It definitely grew because there wasn't an appetite for Indigenous news at all in the 1990s. I started at the Star in 1995. I was lucky enough to get an internship there, and so I started as a general assignment reporter. And so you're basically thrown in as a young reporter. You know, I was 25 years old, and you have to sink or swim in newsroom cultures, no matter, you know, which newsroom you're in. So they throw you into crime, city politics, you know, go cover the Royal Winter Fair and get a front page story out of it. It's everything and anything, and you're doing it daily. Sometimes you're doing 2 stories a day, completely different things. You can't really pitch stories and say, this is actually what I want to do, because you are essentially, when you start, you're a slave to your editor who's telling you to go do that. And don't come back unless you get the story. And it wasn't until you you move up a little bit that you feel more comfortable with saying, I want to do stories on this or that. And I remember pitching stories to my editors, because I stayed at the Star, and it was in the city section, on, it was when HIV and AIDS was just coming into the city of Toronto. I wanted to look at how it was impacting First Nations communities and our people. And yes, so I began to sort of pitch stories every once in a while, because, you know, I could tell that if you pitch too many, my editors would say, we don't really want this right now. They're not really interested in this. That's not really what we're looking for, or what's different, what's new. There wasn't really an appetite for First Nations news, I would say, until after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report came out. After social media, Idle No More. All of these things awakened a conscience, I think, in Canada, that a willingness to actually examine the true history of this country, because for so long Canada just looked away and looked away.
Well, and I want to get into your books, and I want to ask one question, because I know I saw you last night going out for a very exciting event that you were covering for the news.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm like, what was I doing last night? That's right, because that's where I was. Yeah.
No, this isn't a trick question.
Okay,
I swear she knows the answer. And I wondered, I was just curious if you wanted to share a little bit about what you did last night, because for me, I woke up, saw on Twitter your story. It was like the first thing that came up in my news feed. And I thought, wow, that must have been a fun night.
So I was at Jody Wilson-Raybould's campaign office. Yeah, I was there last night. I'm glad, friendly crowd. So I write a column now at the Star, and writing a column is really great, because it gives me a lot of freedom to express an opinion, and it's I have opinions. And so I'm grateful that the Star still employs me to say those opinions. And so I had written about Jody Whistling-Raybould, quite a bit after the SNC-Lavalin scandal, what had happened to her, how it was viewed. It was amazing too how many political reporters and the mainstream media, most of the political press, saw one story. How could she possibly break with party convention? And this is not what we do. And I'm just like, isn't everybody missing the point here? She's actually standing up for what she believes in and for the truth. And, you can't be bullied. She was being bullied into, to giving this opinion that wasn't true. And it was just like, everyone collectively lost their minds.
It happens.
And that was always my take on it. And also, too, it's just like, my God, she is a First Nations woman who was the Attorney General and the Justice Minister. She presided essentially over, she's the first lawyer, the head lawyer in this country. We still have the Indian Act on our books. And here is this brave woman who has reached this point and, always thought, I'm going to change from within. And then she just hits this wall. That's not how we do things around here. So when I found out that I was that the election was at the same time, of course I knew when the election was because it's a set election date. But when I was going to be here, I'm like, my editors asked me, will you help out on the election night? And I'm like, I know what I'm going to do election night. I'm going to go see Jody. And so I was there last night waiting for the results to come in.
And you stayed all the way to the results?
I stayed all the way till the end, absolutely, and then congratulated her at the end.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's her and her family.
I want to get into your books, and starting specifically with Seven Fallen Feathers. And I wanted to get a sense of, the book really covers these 7 young people who were murdered between 2000 and 2011. And I was curious, what was it about those years, or how did the story actually come about to focus on those particular 7 stories?
Thank you for asking that question, because more children, it's not just 7, right? Between 2000 and 2011, children have died beforehand, and they have died after as well. So I had pitched a story at the Star to go, to write a feature on the federal election. Stephen Harper was going up against essentially Jack Layton. And this was before, keep in mind, this is 2011, this was before the TRC report had come out, this was before the things I was talking about, Idle No More, this was before social media was everywhere, this was before CBC Indigenous, this was before APTN was as wonderful and everywhere as it is now. And I had pitched a story to my editors on why is it First Nations people don't vote in elections. And at this point, there wasn't a lot of, are people going to vote? And I knew the answer, why? There are many answers, but one of them being the fact that if you are a status Indian in this country, you did not receive the right to vote until 1960. And so when I pitched this story to my editors, they thought it was a totally exotic idea. What a great idea. That's a really fresh way of looking at the federal election. Why don't you go do that story? And so I'm like, okay. And then I said, well, I need to go to Thunder Bay to do this story. And I needed to go to Thunder Bay because I know people in Thunder Bay. I knew that I needed to be on my mother's home territory to tell this story. And they said, okay, yeah, you can go. But if, again, this is working for a newspaper. I've pitched a story. Even in 2011, newspapers didn't have tons of money, right? So if you go and pitch a story, you better come back with the story you've pitched, because you've got to spend money on airline tickets, rent a car, you've got food, hotel, whatever. And so I pitched a story. I went up there, and one of the driving reasons why I wanted to go was to go sit with Stan Verity, who at the time was the Grand Chief of Anishinaabe-Aski Nation. And Anishinaabe-Aski Nation is a massive part of Ontario. It's actually a huge territory, roughly the size of the country of France. And it extends from north of Thunder Bay, because Thunder Bay is actually Robinson Superior Treaty Territory, so it's just north of there, over to James Bay, Hudson Bay, and the Manitoba border. There's this vast amount of territory. It's Treaty 9 territory for the most part, and Treaty number, little bits of Treaty 5 up in the corner. And the Grand Chief for that whole area, there's 49 northern communities, about 50,000 people live there. He's got a headquarters in Thunder Bay. So I went to go visit with Stan. And the reason why he has a headquarters in Thunder Bay is because if you live in one of these remote communities, and if you want to access a doctor, if you want to access a high school education, if you want any social services, if there's anything that you need, shopping even, and anything more than a northern store, you have to come into Thunder Bay. And so Stan was there, and I went to go visit Stan, because that's where his office is. And I sat across from him, and we began our interview. And I asked the question, I usually start with one big, broad question that's get him comfortable and into it. And I asked him. That's one way to do it. That's one way. Or you can just go right for the jugular, right from the beginning. And so I said, why is it that First Nations people aren't voting? And he looked at me and he said, why aren't you doing a story about Jordan Labas? And so then I thought, clearly I'm mumbling or he can't hear me. So I asked my question again, the same question. He said, Jordan has been missing for 70 days. And we went back and forward like that, and it became apparent to me that we were speaking two different languages. I was asking my questions. He was telling me about Jordan and asking me, why aren't you doing this? And it was about after 10 minutes of this that I realized to sort of, stop myself and said, you know what, Tanya, you've got to put your manic Toronto journalist self aside. You have to sit and remember who you are, where you are, and that you're sitting in the presence of a Grand Chief and he's trying to tell you something and you're not listening. And it was at that moment that I like to think that I started to listen to what he said, because that's when I said, tell me about Jordan. And that's when he said that Jordan was the 7th student to go missing or to die in Thunder Bay since 2000. And then when he said that, I was like, a whole flood of emotions came over me. It was like disbelief. 7? How can this be? How can it be? It was anger. I felt humiliated. I felt ashamed. As a journalist, I should have known, My mom is from here. This is where my mom's mom is from. This is where my people are from. How come I didn't know this? Where were the satellite trucks? Where were, all of the national newspapers? How come no one was here reporting on this? How come I was just hearing about this now? It also broke my heart.
And I'm curious how you sat in that moment, because I feel like, I had moments like that where I realized, like, I remember learning about the Rwandan genocide from the Hollywood movie and being like, what on earth? Where was I? But you're sitting in that conversation in that moment, like when you left that conversation in that moment, like, was that when all those thoughts came in, like as he was sharing?
No, it was like as he was telling me this, it was just like this, It's just like this wash, right? It's like, yeah. It was hard to describe. And then he said to me, let me take you on a drive. So then we got into his truck, and then we went for a drive, and we drove to the shores of the Kaministiquia River. And the Cam River is this massive river. There are over 500 waterways that go into Gitchigami, which is Lake Superior, from all points in the north and all through the territory, south, west, and east, all coming in. And the Cam is this big, massive river that comes in from Dog Lake and wraps around Mount McKay. And so we were there, and that's where the grain mills are, the towers are. And I remember he parked his truck, and we got out, and I said to him, Stan, what are we doing here? And I felt sick, because I knew exactly where we were. I look up, and there is Anamikiwaju, which is Mount McKay. That's my family's reserve. And we're at the base of the mountain. And he said to me, this is where trackers think that Jordan was last seen. This is where we saw footprints going into the water. And within 2 months of us standing there, Jordan's body would be found right there.
I want to ask about the putting together of the book, but I am curious about what happened with that newspaper story.
I still haven't filed it.
When you went back, did you have to say anything about?
No, you know what? It's like, this is what happened. So after we were at the river, we got back into his truck, and then he drove me to Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, which is a First Nations run high school in Thunder Bay, where all the kids from those communities I was telling you about in Nan Territory, they all come in to Thunder Bay, 13, 14, 15 years of age, and they live with boarding families 500, 600 kilometers away from their families, their language, their moms and dads, everything they know, their community, and they come into the city to go to school. And 6 of the 7 fallen feathers, they were from Dennis Franklin Cromartie. And so Stan drove me to the school, and I remember we walked into the principal's office, and he said, "This is Tanya, she's Nish, tell her everything." Then he left me there. And I was there for, oh my gosh, hours, about 4 or 5 hours. I talked to teachers, I talked to students. Yes, I was grateful. Like I was told a lot.
You must have gone back to your hotel and been like...
Yep. Well, I called my editor and I said to her, that story that you sent me up here to do, I don't have that story, but I have this one. And I told her, and then she's like, do it. Let's do it. Let's do it big. And we did. It was on the front page of the Star, big story, and I began to follow that story from then. That was in 2011.
And I think one of the things that when you read Seven Fallen Feathers, maybe if you don't, I know from putting my own memoir together, when you have all this research that you've gathered, and Seven Fallen Feathers is the story of these 7 lives, but it's also like a history. It's it's the background of the school and the boarding, the system that's harming these young people. And I'm curious logistically how you managed to write it and put it together, what your process looked like in terms of gathering and then putting it all together for the book.
What my process looked like.
I know,
Chaos.
I was thinking about like, do you have a home office?
I have a home office? I do. It's my dining room table.
Yes.
And then I have my kitchen table. And sometimes I go from my kitchen table to my dining room table, and I have piles of papers. I've got treaties. I've got court decisions. It's like I'm essentially a nightmare, just like, to be quite honest with you. It's just like, so this is where I write. I've got stacks of notebooks. I'm a total journalist that way, just stacks and stacks of things, pieces of paper. So...
And you went around and talked to each of the families, and those became part of it too. How did the actual, when you sat down to write the book cover to cover?
Right. I had, there's a whole bunch of stories with that one, to be quite honest with you. But I have to say that I also work with an incredible editor. Her name is Janie Yoon at House of Anansi, and she's incredible. Like, she really, really helped me see. She is, as she'll tell you, she goes, "Look, I'm Korean and I'm from Scarborough. I don't know anything." She goes, "You have to get out of your newspaper mentality," because I remember the first time I thought I'd finished Seven Fallen Feathers, the book, and I remember being so proud and handing it in to her. And very soon after, she handed it back to me and went, I was like, "Cut it." And she's like, "No." And we talked through so much of it, so much of, especially as a newspaper reporter, I often gloss over things. And she's like, "Get expensive. You have all the real estate in the world here. You can just describe everything. Just do it. And that's what I did. And with her help, by pointing all that out, but also too with the families. Like, I don't feel like I wrote this book alone at all. And I hope that all the voices that we have collected in the book honor the kids. That was always the thought that I had behind writing this book, is honoring the children and showing Canada that each of the 7 fallen feathers had a family. They had somebody who loved them. They had a mom or a dad or an aunt or an uncle or a best friend. Every child was part of a community. Every child was hope that was lost. And I really wanted to bring that forward, because sometimes when we talk about our children, especially our First Nations kids, we see statistics. We see blurbs. We see little stories in the newspaper, and people, they don't understand that this is a child. This is a child that you have asked to leave his or her parents when they are 13 or 14 and go live 600 kilometers away in a language that is not theirs. Most of the kids spoke English as a second language. And also, too, it's a total culture shock from the communities that they're from. You're from a place of 600 to 2,000 people that doesn't have traffic lights or restaurants or stores. It's huge. We don't see the kids that way. And I didn't understand why Canadians didn't see that. They're children.
Did you, when you set out to write this, talk about honoring the dead, was there some part of you that was hopeful that it would change things, that it would become, sort of a moment that would lead to change?
The communities, the families, the people that I write about, 7 Fallen Feathers, give me hope. And these are all people that I know. They're people that I love dearly. They're good friends. They are. I have hope in all of them, and the stories that they tell, and wanting to make change. And all of the families putting their stories forward. Right? That in that hope that things would get better, that no other children would have to go through this. But they have.
But they did.
Yeah, and they continue to.
Yeah.
So it's they are the ones really that's what gives me hope. And the kids now, and again, our leaders that are out there every single day fighting this fight.
I know in Thunder Bay there are many. You've mentioned some of the systemic problems, and has anything come in the new cases that are coming out? Anything different that's being done, or anything that's?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's a definite striving for change. People are wanting to change so much. Since the inquest that was called into the deaths of the 7. Lots has happened. I mean, the Ministry of the Attorney General's office sent up Dr. Jerry McNeely, and he's part of something called the OIPRD, which is the Office of the Independent Police Review Directorate, because once the inquest finished, their allegations of racism in the Thunder Bay Police Force needed to be addressed. And these are allegations that community members have been talking about for a very, very long time. So it was Kathleen Wynne who was the premier, and she sent up Dr. Jerry McNeely to go investigate. He did investigate, and his report came out, I guess it's going to be about a year ago now, in December. And he looked through old cases from the Thunder Bay Police. He compared them, how police handled Indigenous deaths as opposed to handle non-Indigenous deaths. What is the difference? And that report is totally groundbreaking and unbelievable. I mean, it's the first time an entire police force has been investigated for systemic racism. And guess what? he found that, yes, there is systemic racism. When the report was released, it wasn't a joy to anyone, right? I mean, everyone that was listening to what he had to say knew, and it was pretty bittersweet to hear it, right? Someone else has to come in and say, yes, it's actually true what you've been saying for all this long. Yeah, you're right.
It's there.
It's there. And but the big thing that he also, there's many things. There was 44 recommendations that came out of that report, and one of them being that nine First Nations deaths would be reopened, including 4 of the 7 fallen feathers. So they are now all being looked at by an interdisciplinary, or I should say a it's a big task force of officers made up of people outside of Thunder Bay, officers from Thunder Bay.
Amazing. I want to segue a little bit to the Massey lectures.
Okay.
Because it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that it sort of evolved out of your work from Seven Fallen Feathers and the success of Seven Fallen Feathers. I am one of those people, oddly enough, even though I do kind of work for CBC, I did not grow up listening to CBC. I've heard the Massey lecture as like this phrase that gets thrown around and somebody gets named it and I'm like, oh, that sounds fancy. But like I actually, like what was that? What actually, I'm hoping there's other people in the room that maybe feel the way I do. How does it work? Like how did it come about and what was pitched to you as like what your job was going to be as the Massey lecturer?
I love that because I'm the same as you. It's like, oh, yeah, it's like, really? Massey lectures? Yeah, it was a thing that sometimes was on, like,
Yes.
Is this being recorded? It's like, yeah, it's just like, I wasn't part of my, bucket list of items to do, right? And I got to tell you, too, that most First Nations people in this country don't have a burning desire to go to a Massey lecture. It's just like not something that's in everyone's conscious. So let's go out there. Let's go listen to that person give a lecture, behind a lectern. Yeah, no. And so when I was asked to do it, it was a surprise. I was on, I had finished Seven Fallen Feathers had just come out. I was on the Atkinson Fellowship, which means you have I had applied for a year off. I had to just produce 8 feature stories. It could be on anything I wanted it to be on, as long as it would shift public policy in Canada. And what I wanted to look at was suicide in our communities with our youth. And so, to be honest with you, I started it in October, and I basically, October, November, December, didn't do much. I sort of took off, because you're supposed to too, right? It's like your sabbatical, it's for a senior journalist, and so I was like, okay, I'm just kind of going to lie down now and try and sort of regroup after writing Seven Fallen Feathers. Well, that didn't really work out either, because then I found myself on the road a lot with the book because people were really interested in it, and I was talking a lot about it. And it was in the new year. My goodness, I think I'm going to say around February that I got a call from Sarah McLaughlin at House of Anansi, and she says, Janie and I, my editor, we want to take
they put it into the fancy.
They're my publishers.
They make the book.
Yeah. And they said, we want to take you out for dinner. I'm like, uh-oh. What's going on? Something's going on. So I said, okay, all right. So we went out to a little fancy pants place for dinner, and we sat there, and she looked at me, and she goes, the CBC is going to ask you to be the Massey lecturer. Sarah's very direct. CBC is going to ask you to be the Massey lecturer. And I'm like, what? What? Are you sure? You sure you're going to ask me? And she goes, oh yeah, we're really sure. We're really sure. They're going to ask you. And I said, well, why? Like, I don't exactly fit the profile of your Massey lecturer, because I knew enough. Like, I knew that I'd listened to Margaret Atwood's series on debt. I'd heard that. I knew of course, Thomas King's. Because I love his work, and But other than that, I didn't know too much about it, other than really important people had done this before. And, these lectures were broadcast on CBC, and you went around Canada talking about these things. And I said, you sure you haven't got me mixed up with somebody else? And they're like, no. They're going to ask you because of, you're right, because of this, of the strength of seven fallen feathers. Yeah. So it was weird. It was weird. It's still a little weird, actually, thinking about it.
Was your approach any different from Seven Fallen Feathers, or same dining room table chaos?
100% same dining room. Yeah, except for this time I had my editor with me because we had such a short period of time. This is part of the story. So essentially, actually, why I was asked to be the Massey lecturer too was because the person they had didn't work out. True story. So, and I didn't really, they told me that as we were sitting there. And so I guess that's also part of the reason why I'm like, we know you can do this. You can get this written. You can do this, and you can get out there. And I'm like, because I was thinking, maybe they mean like next year or the year after I could do the Massey lectures. They're like, no, it's due in 5 months.
Oh my gosh.
So we did and I just made a commitment there and then. And, it was, again, it was the year I was supposed to take off, right, and be a little bit more of a sabbatical, and it turned into, oh my gosh, let's get this done. But part of the reason why I said yes was because I knew it was a platform. It was a platform to reach people, so I could tell the stories of our communities. And I remember calling Alvin Fiddler, who's a good friend of mine, who's the Grand Chief now of Anishinaabe Nation. I was like, should I do this? Because I'm going to say we, because it's going to be we. We're all going to do this. It's not just going to be me here. And he's like, yep, let's do it.
We're almost at the question time, but I have one more question to ask. I only asked 3 of the 4 questions, so I'm going to ask the 4th.
I haven't talked long enough to
But this is your warning for your thoughtful questions. Before we get to their thoughtful questions, I want to ask you that 4th question, which is, what is your purpose?
I'm a storyteller. I am lucky enough, I'm blessed to have the gift of story from my people, from my community, from many people actually. For some reason, people tell me their stories. They have at the Star. I've been privileged that way, but also too in the North, in my communities. I feel very lucky. And I feel like this is my purpose, is to bring those stories to you on their behalf, and always to tell you that this is all of us, right? And just point out what we see, what I see, which is a different Canada, I think, than most others see, and the need for change.
All right. Now is your turn to add to the conversation. If you just pop up your hand and bravely share your question, I will repeat it through the microphone while Tanya thinks of a fabulous answer, as she has all evening. Are there any questions?
I welcome easy questions too.
What did you have for breakfast?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tanya, thank you very much. It's great to hear you share tonight. You mentioned you're a single mom and you have 2 teenage children. What's the story that you want them to know going forward?
So the question was, as a single mom with 2 teenagers, what's the story that you want to share with them going forward, or for them to know going forward? I think is the actual word. To know, to know going forward.
Thank you for that. Have you read the acknowledgements at the back of Seven Fallen Feathers? Because I mentioned my children, and that's exactly what I say, that it is, that I want them to be proud of who they are and where they're from, and to embrace all sides of where they're from, who their family is, And it's their job to take the stories forward and to carry them forward. That's the most important thing to me, is that they know that they're loved and where they're from, and that they are part of this great line of people from many sides. From their father was Irish, and they're Polish, they're Anishinaabe. They are all of these things, but they can't forget who they are and where they're from.
I will say, most books, the acknowledgements are kind of like, wah, wah. But I actually really enjoyed reading your acknowledgements, your epilogue. It was one of those ones where I was reading the bibliography at one point. I was just like, oh, Chocolate Chew has these books. I'm going to go find them. It's like a really fulsome read. Any other questions? Yeah, up there.
I'm just curious, I'm just watching you sitting there so confident, and I'm wondering, how did you get to that place of being so confident?
You talked about being, sorry, I was getting excited about the question. I have to repeat the question. Was talking about the confidence that Tanya exudes and asking how you got this confident. And I think especially because you talk about being like in books and sort of feeling like an outsider, how this came to be.
That's like, it's hilarious. That's really funny. I'm glad you think I'm looking so confident and put together up here, because totally not true. I get nervous, every time I have to take the stage. When we did the Massey lectures, I said to the CBC, I'm only going to do this if I could take my elder with me, Sam Ashni Pinescum. And the CBC's like, what? And I'm like, you're asking me to get up every single night and talk about genocide. I've just got finished writing this book on the deaths of our kids and about, colonization, not just here, but also in America, in Australia, and in the Sami lands, in Brazil. And, I'm talking about girls that have died in Wapakika. I'm talking about, my family. It's just like, if you want me to do this, I need support. And that's where I get help, I get help from my community. Without Sam, without the people I surround myself with, we all do the same work in the North. And without that, I wouldn't be able to sit here and
Look confident.
And look confident. Yeah, look confident. But yeah, ceremony helps a lot. I mean, I smudged before I came over here tonight.
There's that's one of the things about all our relations as well. There's a really sort of global look at Indigenous genocide and systemic racism. That's quite fascinating. I had more questions. I ran out of time, guys. Sorry. Other questions? Yeah.
So it's been a few years since Seven Feathers came out. I'm an educator.
Thank you. I love all the teachers that read my books. It's so great.
What would you like to say now to both Indigenous and non-Indigenous teachers?
So the question is, the book came out a while ago, in Bookland a while ago. And so what would you like to say? She's an educator, and she asked, what would you like to say to educators now?
Miigwech for reading Seven Fallen Feathers and all our relations, and read more. Read more First Nations, Métis, Inuit authors. Put them in your curriculum, because you cannot wait for governments to legislate changes in curriculum, because that's not going to happen. It's not going to be as you guys are the ones that are in control of your classrooms and are the ones that have that first bond with students from a young age. And it's not just about books too. It's about First Nations art, cooking, sports, movies, documentaries, everything, spirituality, Indigenous knowledge. bring that into your classroom. Try and learn as much as you possibly can with that. And if you don't know, ask, call up your local friendship center. Call up your local community and say, hey, this is, what we're doing, or write a letter and say, can you help? Like, extend a hand. You'll be so surprised what comes back to you.
I always recommend too to learn publicly. So if you're on social media, following Indigenous authors on social media, following Indigenous media sources, and sharing that information, it sort of helps to spread the weight of disseminating information around. Yeah.
I just want to say thanks for writing the book. It was amazing. I loved it at so many different levels. I was wondering if you could talk more about the artwork for Seven Fallen Feathers. You wrote a little bit about it in the book, and I'm just wondering.
I'm so glad you asked that question. It was one of my questions, but I was like, time-wise, I'm just going to move on. So the question was, can you tell us a little bit about the artwork for...
Do you remember how I was saying that it doesn't feel like I was the only person that wrote this book, and it feels like it was many hands? And I often say that because it's true. The title for Seven Fallen Feathers and the book cover itself is a painting. It's called Seven Fallen Feathers. And the painting was done by Christian Morrisseau. Christian is, he's Kyle's father. And Kyle is one of the Seven Fallen Feathers. And can I just have it for a second?
Yeah.
And so when the inquest into the deaths of the seven finished, he thought that he was going to feel a sense of peace, or a sense of, okay, now maybe I can move on. But that didn't come. He was still left just totally hollow. And so that night that the inquest ended, he went to his studio and he just began to paint. And this is what he painted. It's you can't see it very well here, but it's a requiem to his firstborn son. This is Kyle right here. These are all of the seven students. That's Robin with the little yellow, I call them shoulder pads. I'm sure they are not shoulder pads. And this is about their journey to the afterlife. They're all going up. There's the drum there. Their ancestors are waiting for them to take them on their journey. It took him 3 days solid. And it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It's huge. It's about the size of this carpet. I mean, it's just, when you walk in, it just commands your attention. And he told me too that, he was so tired of listening to everybody talk about the seven students as the seven dead students. He said, they were, every student had a family and somebody who loved them. They were fallen feathers. And that was the title of his painting, and he said that he wanted it to be the title of the book. Many hands.
Glad you asked. One more question I think we have time for. If we have one.
Stunned into silence.
I know. I'm like, did I have one that I can zip in? I think I'll ask one more as we close.
What my favorite color is?
Yes. I'm curious I think you already answered this question. So I'm going to ask you this one. In your acknowledgements, you apologized for any failings of fact in Seven Fallen Feathers. And I'm curious if you discovered any, or if if you carry a bit of that burden of just always being true to the point of being prepared to be wrong. Do you know what do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think, as a writer, you're always worried about this. I mean, especially when you're dealing with this story that you're carrying, and it means so much to so many people that we know and that we love that are in our communities. I was so very cognizant of the fact that what if something here would trigger or hurt or harm. So we sent out one family, Curran Strang's family. I couldn't speak to his parents. His parents lived sort of off the grid from Pekanjikam, and they didn't participate in the inquest into the seven. So it was his friends that I spoke to. But we went out, I gave the chapter, like every family, I gave them the chapter on their child before we went to print. So, and then a lot of people read the book too before it went to print. Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler read the book. Tisa, his wife, who's a high school teacher, she read the book. Sam Machne Penescum, my elder, he was actually the elder for the families of the Seven Fallen Feathers. And he does like work in Thunder Bay every day. We all read the book and put our heads down and said, okay, how do we feel about this? So, but you're always still,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's always that burden of like
Yes.
doing it right and honoring.
Right, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. I'm going to read some announcements, and then I want to finish with a quote. And I would like those to be the last words that we hear. I'm going to get that ready. So thank you for joining us at the Vancouver Writers Festival. A reminder that the books are for sale, and Tanya will be available to sign your copies in the lobby. Please don't forget to complete the online feedback survey later today. We value your feedback. This is a quote that's actually in the opening to the book. I don't know what they call those quotes that come before the book. Quotes that come before the book. Official title. And it's before
Prologue?
the CBC.
No, it's not that.
It's not
What's it
prologue.
called? No, what is it called? There's a name for it.
Preface?
Preface.
Epigraph?
Epigraph.
Those all sound very good.
Yes.
Let's go with those.
Yep.
All of the above. This is from Thomas King's CBC Massey Lectures in 2003, The Truth About Stories, a Native Narrative. But don't say in the years to come that you would have lived your life differently if only you had heard this story. You've heard it now. Thank you.
Miigwech.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you.
You've been listening to Books and Ideas Audio, a presentation of the Vancouver Writers Fest. You can find Tanya Talaga's Seven Fallen Feathers and All Our Relations wherever books or audiobooks are sold. To hear more events like this one, please visit our website at writersfest.bc.ca.